What's up YouTube? Brian here, back again with another rod review video, and today we're going to be talking again about the 7.3 medium St. Croix victory rod. Now first off, I want to give a quick shout out to my Instagram. If you're not following me on IG, I definitely suggest you doing that because I'm posting a lot more content on there, especially around baits and actual fish catches and all those kinds of things. So give me a follow on Instagram, I would much appreciate it. So anyway, next up, let's talk about this rod. Now, so back in March of last year, so almost a full year ago, when the St. Croix Victories were launched, right? When they came out, they were launched. I did a launch videos because I got these rods a little early from some of my friends at Tackle Trap, and I did a full video, but I hadn't actually had them out on the water yet. Well, I had the Victory spinning rod, I think maybe out because it was winter. Anyway, point is, I've had a whole year on this rod, and I thought I owed it to you guys to kind of do another video because a lot of people on YouTube, they take a rod out, they look at it, they talk about it, but I'm going to try and get centered here. You often don't hear about like the follow-up videos, like after actually using the rod out on the water, how does it feel? So I figure if I did a initial impressions rod video, I need to do a follow-up. So here we go. Now this rod is what I would consider a gem. I really, really, really like this rod. So there's a couple reasons. Now, as you know, this rod is essentially a cover band, a copy, an influenced rod from this bad boy, the NRX. Now these rods are long, so I'm gonna keep hitting these against the wall over here. This room I'm in is not like super, super big. So if you hear, sorry about that. 872S, the NRX Classic 7.3 medium extra fast action spinning rod. This is like one of the GOAT spinning rods of all time. I have it in the old version like here, and I have the NRX Plus version as well. This rod is essentially the everyman's version. I call it the cover band. It's not as good as the original, but you know what? You have a few beers, they sound pretty much the same. All the same songs. Sounds good. Why not have some fun with it? So this rod comes in at a $200 price point. It is made in the United States in the Park Falls, Wisconsin factory. Now, I'm not going to cover the whole Victory line. Actually, I'm going to link in the card up in the corner. I'm going to throw the original Victory video I did, which I had some problems in that video. I screwed up some of the weights because I was in a kind of in a zone just talking about these rods, and I actually got some incorrect information around the ratings for weights on between the NRX and the Victory rod, and I have not stopped hearing about it. Like, people keep making comments like, don't you know the difference between 3/8 and ½ ounces, blah, blah, blah. I do. I screwed up that video. I left it. It's gotten 18,000 views, so everyone got to see my screw up. It's out there for the world. So anyway, this rod is rated to ½ ounce. Now, here's the funny thing. This guy is rated to 3/8, and yes, it is a lower rating than the than the Victory. But the big difference is the Victory, as usual with St. Croix rods, is softer. St. Croix, they're a walleye company. I know people don't want to say this, but they're not a bass rod company. They're a walleye company. They make great, fantastic walleyes. Walleye anglers are their bread and butter, have been forever. When they make spinning rods and casting rods, you're not getting that extra fast, stiffer action out of St. Croix rods. Just in general, you're not. It doesn't even matter if you get the extra heavy or the heavy rods in the St. Croix line. They're going to be a little squishy. It's just the way St. Croix makes their rods. It's in their DNA as a company. It is what it is. So when you're thinking, oh, I'm getting this rod and it's exact clone of the 872S, it's not. It's very, very, very close. Like I said, it's the cover band. It's not the original members. It's it's one step off. It's like the Shasta of Coke, right? It's the the house brand, the Kirkland, whatever. So anyway, but it's still a great rod. So this is $200 price point. You're getting a ½ ounce rating. Although even though the rating is lower on the NRX, I would actually throw ½ ounce baits more on the NRX. I think this rod is, like with most NRX, is a little underrated. And I think this rod is probably rated just about right, although it is squishier and softer, meaning that the bend on this rod goes further down into the blank than the 872S. Now, that's not saying that the tip on this thing is, it's still got a fast tip. Now, they actually list on this rod that it's an extra fast action. Nothing in St. Croix is really extra fast. It just isn't. Their extra fast is really not that fast. It's more like a fast. I would call this a fast. It's not a medium. It's not parabolic. It's not extra fast. This guy is extra fast. This thing is more of a fast. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it makes sense in my head and in my hands. So when you bend these two next to each other, especially against the NRX Plus, this thing does squish and bend further down into the blink. Now, is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I think this rod is great. So I use this rod a lot for river fishing, for throwing paddle tails. Let's go over the techniques on this rod that it's great at because it's a little softer. Number one, this thing casts really far. This thing makes really, really great casts. So if you're throwing Ned rigs, shaky heads, Nico, this is a great Nico rig rod. If you're fishing Nico rigs around grass, like grass edges, sparse grass, this thing is great. Paddle tail swim baits, you want to fish paddle tail swim baits deep or even shallow, great. You can wacky Senko with this rod, although I think it's a little soft for that. I would prefer a little more like a more firm 7-foot rod, or even maybe a smaller than 7 foot, because you're probably going to be skipping them around docks. Not a great dock fishing rod because it fishes big. So if you've never fished an 872S, these rods are really long. Actually, when you stand the 870, I'm not going to have it in this shot, but when you stand the 872S and the 7.3 Victory next to each other, they literally are the exact same length, accounting for the handle. So these rods fish big. So if you're a smaller dude and you're on a kayak, this is gonna be a lot of rod to handle. It's a big boy rod. It's real long, big long handle. Can make real long casts. You can just bomb stuff out there if you got a little weight. So paddle tail swim baits, great. Flukes, like weightless fluke style stuff, great. Ned rigs, great. Nico rig, great. Shaky head, great. It's just overall, it's a really great rod, especially if you're fishing in that like 6 foot to 30 foot, like you're fishing deep water, definitely can do this. And actually, this could be a really great deep water drop shot rod. So if you're on those Great Lakes and you're dragging around like a 1/4 ounce or even like a 3/8 ounce drop shot, and you need a lot of like parabolic bend in that rod to really fight those fish, like big fish out deep, this rod could absolutely do it. So I would say deep water, heavier weight, drop shot specialty rod for sure. Now let's talk about some of the components. Now, this comes with Fuji O series guides, which are a budget guide. Now, when I heard they're a budget guide, I'm like, oh, they're gonna suck in the cold. Because in the winter in Minnesota, we like to go fish on the river where we're fishing in sub-freezing conditions. So guides tend to really show if they're good or not when you get them in that really cold and icy conditions. I'm happy to report these Fuji O guides were amazing. Like this rod kicked butt in like 20-degree weather where ice is building up on the guides and on the line and your hands are cold and it's just nasty out. These guides and this rod overall performed phenomenally. This has become one of my favorite river beater fishing rods. So, especially in the winter. So anyway, the Fuji O guides, even though they are budget and they're cheap, they're pretty, because they got to save some money on this somewhere because they are manufacturing this in America. Everybody knows that when you build stuff in the United States, it's hard to keep it inexpensive because American workers cost more. So anyway, that being said, the guides are fine. I love the grip on this thing. I talked about this grip in my other video. It's got the standard Fuji grip that you can find on other rods like the Daiwas. A lot of rod makers use this Fuji grip. So it's got the standard off-the-shelf Fuji grip, which is awesome if you're a choker upper. So if you choke up full grip or you choke up pinky grip, or even if you're split grip, this grip is great, perfectly fine. I got no filler falling out after a hard season of use. I also U40 cork seal all my corks, so that tends to not happen. So balance-wise, it is pretty good. This has got a Vanford 2500 on it, and I'm going to do the finger test, even though some people think it's stupid. I think it's valuable information. Why not? So there you go. Balance is pretty much right at the lock, just above the grip with a 2500 Vanford, which as you all know is a very lightweight reel. So if you throw a little bit of a heavier reel on this thing, it's going to feel fine. What I love about this is with the Vanford on it and some line, this thing comes in at just about 10 ounces. So this is like a 10 ounce, that magical combo that you can get under 10 ounce. Without line on it, this thing falls under 10 ounces with a 2500 Vanford on it, which is, to me, when you're in that super lightweight bass fishing combo territory, you need to be under 10 ounce. So you can achieve that with this $200 Victory and like a lightweight reel like a Vanford, right? So that's kind of awesome. Let's talk about the weight real quick. As I talked about in my previous video on this thing, this Vanford weighs in at 3.53 ounces, which makes it lighter than the old NRX, which was 3.56, 3.57. So these are both basically 3.5 ounce rods, $200, $600. But the new NRX Plus version of the 872 is actually 3.3. So the new NRX Plus of the 872 wins, leapfrog to this thing as far as weight goes. But still, extremely light, soft rod, pretty good guides, balances well. There's really nothing negative about this rod. Some people might not like how squishy it is. I mean, it's not super squishy, but I think people are expecting this kind of action on this rod, which it's close. Remember, think cover band, not the original band. This is the Led Zeppelin. This is the Zed Leplin, right? Okay. So that being said, I really like this rod. It's sticking around. It's definitely become a beater rod. Like if I have to go somewhere and I just want to throw a rod in my truck, I'm not grabbing my NRXs or like my more expensive stuff. If I'm going to be like bank fishing, going on a trip. So this year I was up fishing in northern Minnesota on Ely, and I was in a metal rowboat. And I had nothing. I mean, these rods were just kind of banging around in a metal rowboat. I ain't bringing my NRXs. I'm not bringing my Megabass stuff when I'm in those kinds of conditions. I'm bringing this, right? So I have to say, just a phenomenal rod, $200. Getting these is a little tricky right now. Tackle Trap and Omnia both do carry this rod, and the stock kind of fluctuates in and out, and sometimes codes work, so just always try them. So I will leave links in the description of this video where you can pick up the St. Croix 7.3 medium Victory. Now, my one thing, this is super nitpicky. St. Croix's got to stop with naming their rods. They called this thing like the Max Tactical. Knock it off, St. Croix. You're not one of the cool kids naming all your rods. I know everyone's doing it, like Ark's doing it. Megabass does it great. Let Megabass name their rods and have cool names for their rods. They're good at it. Stop trying to copycat Megabass with coming up with cool names for your rods, because you haven't made a cool name yet that's stuck. No one can name any of the names of any of the St. Croix rods. Even though they slap like 45 names on all their rods, no one knows what they are because no one cares. It's not, just stop. Just go with your models, go with the names. Stop slapping Max Tactical on the handle. It don't matter. It's lame. That's just my opinion. Take it what you want. If St. Croix people are watching this video, keep naming your rods. No one cares what you call them. You can call it whatever you want. No one's going to remember it. Anyway, this is, like I said, super nitpicky. Doesn't really matter to the rod or the performance or the price or anything. Just funny marketing stuff that I don't really understand. But anyway, another thing. This rod has a glossy finish on the rod. It is not a, it's not a raw carbon blank. And I will report that I've been beaten on this rod and I cannot find a single scratch or flaw on the finish. It's held up really well over the last year, and I have not been nice to this rod. It's been in and out of trucks, thrown around at my camper, bank fishing, river fishing. I fell down a side of a bank, and this thing has fallen and knocked into trees because my butt slipped on some snow and still looks brand new. So wear and tear on this rod, great. Weight, great. Grip, great. Action, unique, very, like, you know, they're obviously copycatting the 872S, and they got pretty darn close. They didn't nail it. It's still a little soft, and I think people who are looking for that 872 and they shake it and push it into the store and balance it, and then they pick this thing up and they're like, oh, it is squishier. It's a little softer. I don't think it's a bad thing. In reality, catching fish on this rod is a complete blast. I've caught many fish on this thing, and it has not let me down. So anyway, if you got any questions, comments, concerns, any of that kind of stuff, please drop it in the comments on this video. Hit me up on the old Instagrams. And until next time, please hit like and subscribe. If you've made it to the end of this video, you're obviously a rod snob and you should be following me. So until next time, I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it.